Welcome, welcome again, my beautiful audience, to the new episode Diversity of the Game Changer. Good morning from Norway and UK. From me and from my friend, it's actually already our second show of different reasons. Maybe we already missed each other so much, so we wanted to rerun it quite soon. Welcome, Benjamin Butler in our studio today. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us on Saturday, sunny Saturday in Norway, actually. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, last time we spoke, I was in, I think, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and you were in Monaco or somewhere in that region, and now I'm in the UK, and I guess you're in Norway.
Yeah, can you imagine nowadays, right? We should be so grateful and happy that we really can connect from all over the world. And the episode title today, and as it was actually the last time, but we are probably already since last time we spoke, we have evolved, we have seen, experienced more. So I think it can be very interesting to elaborate about all these topics again. At the Embassy of the Future, Asian Wisdom, Neurodiversity and Visionary Leadership with Benjamin Butler. And today we step into the future, literally to the future, with the visionary founder of the Embassy of the Future. Benjamin is a global futurist, former Wall Street investor, and a modern day philosopher who blends technology, ecology, Asian wisdom, and inclusive leadership into bold new visions for our world. He advises global institutions like UN, raises stop ecocide, and draws from deep traditions from Zen in Japan to indigenous Celtic roots to guide leaders into the future with clarity, depth, and thought. So welcome again.
Thank you.
And future, it's so exciting, though it's so unpredictable now. Every single day, you never know anymore to what type of world you're awakened into, right? It's so much what is happening, going on, and how actually the art now, how actually is not to be lost and totally stuck, overwhelmed by everything. We are going to discuss that, but let's start a little bit backwards, and our first segment will be roots and roads, and your childhood and its impact on your growth and on the uh, everything you have experienced, achieved, what kind of person you are today. So thank you. Take us a little bit back to the childhood, to little Benjamin.
Sure. So I was born on the edge of London in a city called Reading, and then brought up in Hampshire in the south of England. So you may know of Winchester, famous for King Arthur's Round Table, and Southampton, where the Titanic departed on one infamous day. Also, lots of pilgrims went from Southampton, the Mayflower, which obviously was a key part of America's history.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got Stonehenge here.
Oh, wow. Okay, amazing. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, lots of ancient history in this area. And I have Welsh roots as well. So in recent years, I actually bought a property in Wales in the edge of Snowdonia, the mountain range there. But yeah, I had a mixed childhood of a lot of happiness and security at home.
Okay.
But school was utterly terrifying, and the first 11, 12 years. And that sort of informed a lot of my life. The way they set up schooling, it's very industrial. It's one approach for the whole class, even though our minds might be different. And you talk about neurodiversity, etc. Well, when I was at school, I don't think any consideration was taken for that. So until about 12, I was hopelessly lost, terrified of being asked the question, and humiliated in class because I didn't understand. But then eventually I had a housemaster, Mr. Fawkes, who was related to the infamous Guy Fawkes, who tried to blow up the British Parliament. So a true revolutionary. And it turned out that Mr. Fawkes didn't plan to blow up Parliament, but he planted some slight revolutionary seeds in me.
Okay.
Not only did he believe in me and said, Benjamin, I know you can do this, he also taught me to be a real critical thinker. And I remember in our history class, we had to read a book called Making History. And it was a play about a war between Ireland and England. And half the book was the account by the English, and the other half was the account by the Irish.
Okay.
And they're completely different. And of course, this plays out today in world affairs. And so I've always been able to look at the world from multiple viewpoints at the same time, and also have empathy actually for both sides quite frequently. And that helps me now as a futurist, looking at scenarios and looking at what's happening, and not being clouded by ideology, dogma, emotion. But partly because of Mr. Fawkes and maybe this beautiful idyllic boarding school, somehow miraculously I rose from the dead, from the ashes like the phoenix, and I went from bottom of the class to top of the class and got offers at Oxford and University of London, and started to do well in academia. But what I realized looking back was my mind looked at the world backwards from what we were being taught, and now I see that as a strength, not as a weakness, because I think we look at the world in the wrong way traditionally. We look at the world in a very reductionist way. To understand a flower, typically they start talking about what are the constituent parts of the flower, and they go smaller and smaller and more molecular. Or to study an animal, they kill the animal and dissect it, which is utterly absurd. Whereas my understanding of the world is I need to understand the context, the ecosystem in which it lives. So like when I encountered Buddhism, and I heard a Zen poet say the whole universe is in the flower, the clouds, the sky, the plants, the trees, everything is in that flower. And it's true. So I guess, my mind cannot understand a given phenomena by just going more and more micro. I do the opposite. I have to understand the bigger pattern, the bigger context, and then when I get that, then I can go micro again. And it's been a strength, as an investor. I was able to see patterns in the global economy and markets that others couldn't see. I tended to be naturally interdisciplinary, and not stuck in a silo. And then, of course, as a futurist, it's a core skill really to be able to perceive things widely. So I went to university. I still had this nagging, I guess, voice that I wasn't good enough. So to prove myself to the world, I thought, okay, I'll do law, and I'll go to the most prestigious university I can.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, King's College in London was actually ranked the best law school in the country. I went there. It was great in terms of training my mind to become disciplined when I needed to be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
But my soul was like, no way. You know, my creative side, my inner poet, was not satiated by it, and I wanted to travel the world, and yeah, so I quit and studied Japanese, um,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
and then I studied economics with it, just to be a little bit pragmatic, because I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, I'll study Japanese, I'll go and live in Asia, travel the world, but I need a career. So my heart and soul was inspired by Japanese, and then I studied economics and finance with it. So had an absolutely amazing experience at university, and spent a year and a half of it in Japan, and have so many crazy tales. You know, I completely immersed myself in the culture. Got part-time jobs, and I remember I worked in I was in a very prestigious economics department at University of Osaka, and then 3 times a week I worked in a bar so that I could speak to all kinds of Japanese people. So one minute I'm talking to a construction worker, the next minute the CEO of a company, and then the next minute a yakuza gangster. And I spoke to, and as a foreigner, you kind of, in a way, it's easier to talk to everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I probably had experiences. I know I had experiences that most Japanese people didn't have, and got my first job on Wall Street
Mm-hmm.
with uh, an American bank, Morgan Stanley, and then the dot-com internet bubble was just taking off,
Mm-hmm.
and so I worked for less than a year in New York and London, and then because I spoke Japanese, they sent me to Tokyo, and
Okay.
so I had this sort of dream life where I could continue to explore this crazily different culture
Mm-hmm.
that utterly fascinated me. But I still, in parallel to that, I had this international career, and I'd be talking with people and investors all around the world and in all time zones, and would fly to other financial centers. New York, obviously, was our headquarters. It was Morgan Stanley, so
Mm-hmm.
Times Square. Um, and yeah, had a great, interesting financial career. Um, um, I think one thing I'll say about it was I very much looked at broad patterns, and
Mm-hmm.
and I also realized that stories really shaped the future
Mm-hmm.
more than anything. So, you know, many analysts really get fixated by numbers, and you know, they get their Excel spreadsheets out and try and calculate exactly the intrinsic value of an asset. But what I realized was that it was the stories that shaped the world, and so I was fascinated by the stories and the mind. So George Soros wrote a book called uh, "The Alchemy of Finance,"
Uh-huh.
and the subtitle was "Reading the Mind of the Market,"
Uh-huh.
and came out in the early '90s. I read the book, and I was mentored by a few investors that worked closely with Soros, and it it was yeah, it was just incredible training to see how we, you know, it's a spiritual axiom really, that we live in a world where the mind leads matter. It's not the matter leads the mind. You know, a lot of people think that consciousness comes out of the brain. I say it's the opposite way around. You know, the brain is an antennae for consciousness, and the mind creates reality. You know, the Buddha said this 2,500 years ago. The mind makes everything. George Soros said it in 1991. He might not have been doing it for such altruistic reasons as the Buddha, who was a spiritual teacher, but this hedge fund manager that was trying to make lots of money, was one of the most successful investors ever, realized that the mind shaped reality, and so I became quite obsessed with this book, and talking to investors all around the world, trying to understand their thinking, their consciousness, much more than the numbers. Of course, I looked at the numbers as well, and so for me, finance and financial markets was in some ways a sort of a laboratory of human consciousness and thinking, greed, fear, and all of this would shape prices of real estate in London or New York, or stocks and bonds, and so yeah, I was fascinated by finance for a long time, but then I sort of had a dark night of the soul where I guess my intellectual curiosity had not left me, but I had a crisis of meaning in my life. There was a point where I was thinking, why am I doing this? You know, there must be a deeper reason. And
kind of awakening, or
yeah.
Wow, amazing. What a beautiful and colorful and really diversified story. Like everything from, of course, not probably feeling that special belonging in your first classes at school, and then you've been inspired by Mr. Fox, and then actually amazing courage from my point of view, first of all, to decide, no, now I would like to prove that I'm worthy, and go and to be taken into the one of the prestigious, the prestigious law school, and then to quit and change to Japanese. Like, you know, it's you should be really brave to take this decision, and usually also, like, you know, at least in my culture, when you take decisions like that, it's not just your decision, because you're part of system, and you're surrounded by also parents, and it's a big deal what actually you're going to study. It means like everything in your life. So my personally first education was due to my mom. She decided that it was needable and useful and absolutely must to survive. It was in finance, but like you said, my soul wasn't there. My soul never was just with the numbers and just with computer and bank. So, but for you, that you really decided to change it and to follow your heart, or now, you know, it's your calling, right? Especially now through Buddhism. So, and the story of, no, the power of storytelling, I also do believe that's actually, of course, it's the whole idea behind the podcast and show. It's actually the transformative power of storytelling of each person, especially these brilliant diversified minds like you. So please, thank you, then just continue taking us to to your magical path further, and how actually you came to the future, and that you became a futurist. And let's walk through the gates of the embassy of the future. You can, what it is, tell us about, yeah, just briefly, because the whole everything you're telling now, you don't need my guidance at all. It's so interesting, so I don't want even to steal one more minute by listening to myself. So thank you.
No, I love listening to you as well, and I think I've
Thank you so
clearly
much.
led an interesting life as well. Um, my motto for the last few years, well, it was probably a life motto. I just didn't realize it. I was walking a pilgrimage with my dear brother Sujit Ravindran, and we walked from Rome to Assisi in Italy on a pilgrimage. And as part of that process, he invited us to create a vision statement for ourselves. I've done it before, but he also included a life motto. What's your life motto? And it was funny. I was thinking, there's all sorts of mottos I could have. They could be very serious, but I want something. I embrace my mistakes. I take risk, and then I looked just before the pilgrimage, and it said something about a colourful path, and I thought, that's it. I subconsciously bought this journal because my motto, or maybe one can have many mottos, but like live or walk a colourful path, and I think if we don't take those risks, we don't get outside our comfort zone, then I can't do the 9 to 5 or whatever it is job and try and create a seemingly stable life. For me, I was always inspired by Homer's Odyssey or the hero's journey. I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy novels, and Tolkien. Those kind of folk were really a big part of my childhood. And so even today, I'm back in the UK, but I went to South America to speak at a conference, and I took a group of leaders on a 2-week retreat in the Andes in Peru, and I just stayed for 6 months. So I'm very spontaneous, and I wanted to learn more about Latin America. I think each continent has something beautiful to share with us. In Asia, I learned a lot about the mind and consciousness.
Yeah.
Latin America, I'm learning a lot about the heart and music and.
What are your colorful takeaway if you? Okay, this is so huge and wide. Of course, it's not enough just even one, I don't know, day for podcast, but walk in this colorful path, and maybe, yes, you already started hear more about the heart and her soul and mind. What are your most colorful takeaways, like from this different cultures or philosophies, maybe? Because podcast about diversity of thoughts, but actually minds and approaches. Or I know you try to take everything colorful and merge, right? So what maybe this walking colorful path, do you have like any major, I don't know, special colorful gems which you actually embrace most? I don't know, it's, or you try and always to stay with beginner's mind, like in mindfulness, and to be open for new colorful experience?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Being open, being willing to try new things. As people get older, typically they seem to figure out what makes them happy and what doesn't, and they get stuck in habits. And I think I've in some ways I'm the opposite. The older I get, the more willing I am to try anything. And and I believe that the more we try different things, we open up different faculties of our being, our intelligence. At school we were so encouraged to sort of be siloed, either focus on the sciences, humanities, sports, or music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say focus on all of them,
Mm-hmm.
because what I realized when I started dancing again, was it just opened up a different part of my humanity. It's funny, when I've interacted with indigenous people, you hang out with indigenous people, and everyone is singing, everyone's playing music,
Mm-hmm.
and the concept that he or she can't sing is an utter anathema. It's like our birthright. We can all sing,
Yeah.
we can all dance, and I believe we're on the cusp of a sort of a global cultural renaissance, and I think um, I think our culture, when the Industrial Revolution came along, a lot of the romantics and like poets like William Blake and many others warned that we were dangerously moving into an era where our culture would be industrialized, and we were going to go into a barren um, phase. And of course, poets and artists and musicians still existed, but I think for many people,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Western world, it's we lost a lot of our culture, and I think it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
One of my predictions about the future is we're moving to a world that's going to become more local again. The power of place is going to be important. I believe in internationalism is great. Globalism has somewhat kind of created these monocultures.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of diversity, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and not only have we lost diversity in our food and our our landscape.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Wales today, and it's there's still beautiful remnants of temperate rainforests,
Mm-hmm.
but vast amounts of the land is just dedicated to sheep. And the beautiful rainforests that were there are no longer there. Or you drive across the Netherlands, and it's all monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that is symbolic of somewhat what we've seen across the world. And what I'm encouraged by is um, the world has started. You've started to see a lot more interest in indigenous cultures. People in China and Japan and Korea and these countries that I know very well have started to become interested in their own cultures and their own ancient cultures, and realizing, wow, that there's such nourishing ideas and stories and culture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Los Angeles and Hollywood sort of took over the minds of everyone on the planet, and I think we're moving away from monoculture to diversity.
But then I have a question. Do you believe, from one point of view, I can relate to what you're talking about now, and actually that you came to this prophecy or conclusion. But at the same time, it's a little bit the opposite side about AI or everything, right? That now this is huge digitalization everywhere, which makes even more like globalization and everything. Like you see, you are talking about monoculture, right? And then it's really making even not worse, but then another dimension that the whole world, like just in one matrix or system, which totally even artificial. And yeah, so is it not in dangerous, like you say, that it's more renaissance, local, and art? Is it how it's actually then in relation to AI and all this actually really major fast speed evolving development of technology?
Well, as you know, after having a sort of a spiritual, well, dark night of the soul, I transitioned to becoming a futurist. And I spent a lot of time looking at the convergence of all these different trends, technology and AI, quantum computing, trends in culture, demographics, economy, etc., etc. And at Embassy of the Future, we have an event, as you know, in two weeks' time, and we have thought leaders from some pretty serious thought leaders from all those fields, including AI. And these folk, the hardcore AI folk, are interested in human consciousness and creativity, and of course, there's always a danger that we over rely on technologies. But one of my friends who's speaking at our event is just
about this event in 2 weeks. Yes, and about AI digitalization.
Yeah, so we've got one of my friends, Dekai, helped invent Google Translate, was on Google's first eight person AI council. He's come in. We've got a couple of friends who are rolling out $1 billion AI fund, and quite considerable AI expertise in the room. They're all fascinated by human consciousness and creating a better civilization. Dekai's book is actually called Raising AI. So unfortunately, I've not managed to read the book yet. I've got an early advanced copy that I need to read tomorrow. But the concept is, AI is like a baby, and it's the humans that need to educate it. And I'm not sure to what degree that you've been using AI, and I play around with multiple, everything from Twitter's Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini. I mean, I play around with a whole bunch of them, and really, for me, the AI is like a sounding board, an intelligent. It's like a friend that you can bounce ideas off, and you can co-create with it. And so, just like any technology, if you overly rely on it, you will reduce your own inner capacity. So, with the calculator, people who just mindlessly use a calculator become, lose their numeracy. Whereas my father can walk in a restaurant and he'll scan the bill, and in seconds will add it up in his mind and see whether it's correct or not. And he's been doing that his whole life. He's in his 70s. born in the late 1940s. Of course, many of us kind of would regard that as a somewhat superhuman skill, but in his generation, that was kind of more normal. There's a risk, and I've seen people, I've worked with people where they don't engage. They have a question and they immediately outsource it to ChatGPT. And they're trying to write an email, they're trying to write a story, they're trying to write a marketing piece, and they literally just throw in a whole bunch of words and it pops out the other end, and they just use that ad verbatim. There's a danger to that, but if you work with the artificial intelligence, if you sit, contemplate a little bit, ask questions, and then go back and forth and dance with it, I think it can really help human creativity. Whether you're a writer, a creative, in fact, it might actually help spark this renaissance that I think's entirely possible.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. I appreciate that much. It's so cool. Can you tell us, please, a little bit more what actually the whole concept of embassy of the future for people and for me, because it's still very wide and big, very deep concept, actually what it means, and more probably about also this retreat you are going to have in 2 weeks. And as I understand, it's actually, this is your main passion now, right? Because you said you changed the one day, like you understand that the capacity of yours being deeply interested in corporate kind of transformed into another chapter of your life, and then you became a futurist. So what actually means the whole concept became futurist, future of the embassy of the future, and what actually you are doing specifically towards these domains in your retreats, how they are different? Or can you it's very, very interesting for me, because it's something completely new and fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So after I quit working in financial markets on a day-to-day basis, I ended up running a macro hedge fund at one point. I quit, and then I ended up actually my and I will answer your question. This is just a quick segue. I became really fascinated by not just predicting the future, which I was pretty good at, and there were CEOs, CIOs all across the world that would listen to my views, and I learned from them as well. God, I had so many amazing mentors, but I became fascinated by the idea of creating the future. So as my spiritual path deepened and I realized the power of the mind over matter, the imagination shaping reality, my career suddenly teleported to Silicon Valley, and we created a fund called Mind Fund, and we were investing in mainly California companies. And so I was mixing with all these entrepreneurs that were like, so just incredibly creative, passionate, but they were taking things from 0 to 1. They were in the act of creation, and it was fascinating to be really going deeply into spiritual practices and consciousness at the same time as doing this investment. And then eventually I stood back from investment and became a futurist. And was invited to give lots of keynote talks around the world about where is humanity heading, and then the embassy is sort of built upon the three careers that I've essentially had, as a investor trying to predict the future, as an entrepreneur trying to create the future, and then thirdly as a futurist trying to dance between the two. A good futurist recognizes there are certain trends, mega trends and forces that are difficult to change, but we have a huge amount of agency around that. And the Embassy of the Future was really a vision that, just like the British ambassador to Tokyo represents the interests of Britain in Japan, and might introduce British organizations to relevant people in Japan and support their work, encourage them, give them advice, give them intelligence. The Embassy of the Future represents the interests of the future generation today. So we are diplomats from the future. So we spend time traveling to 2070, looking at what's possible given the human mind, technology. We go deep into what's possible. So that's why I'm congregating all these experts from different fields. And then we come back today. It's not an act of just science fiction. And, of course, science fiction books have a role to play. So, like entrepreneurs like Elon Musk said he wouldn't be doing anything that he's doing if he hadn't read science fiction. So science fiction is important, but we go into the future. We time travel into the future using different methodologies and an understanding of the human mind, consciousness. And then we come back to make wiser, more visionary decisions today. And as you started the call, the world is falling apart. There's lots of confusion. I always said that the 2020s would be I wrote a blog piece in 2019 calling the 2020s the tumultuous 20s. It was, for me, entirely predictable that everything was going to unravel in the 2020s. So, when you had plagues of locusts flying across, like out of the Bible, plagues of locusts going across Africa, early 2020, and then an assassination of Soleimani, the Iranian general, and then the pandemic, and then like so many crazy events. And it seemed like the world was utterly unraveling, and then geopolitical events. For me, the 2020s really was about the unraveling of the old systems, the old paradigms, the old ways of thinking. And it's really, although it can be a bit scary, it's sort of a necessary process. It paves way for the creation of the new. So, if you're in the middle of chaos and you go into fear and you contract and you get into survival mode, it's difficult to create. But if you've time traveled to 2070 and you know what's possible and you have a clear vision, then a period of chaos and unraveling is the best period to build a business, the best period to build an organization, the best time to stand up as a leader. What we need is more of us to stand up as leaders, instead of just voting for some politician and thinking that they can solve all our problems. We know that's that has never worked. We in most of the Western democracies, we sort of, especially the US and the UK, where you've got two-party systems, you just go left, right, left, right, left, right, and the fundamental issues never change. So actually, what we need is a breakdown, in some ways, a breakdown of that democratic system. And you're seeing a mini civil war happen in the US at the moment. But I think if you have a positive vision of the future, there's so many wonderful things we can do to build the future whilst everything is unraveling. So the Embassy of the Future really is representing the interests of the future generation.
It's so cool what you think, because you're so like I love even the energy I'm scanning. Like, you're so sure about when you're talking. We just traveled to 2070. We can see the clear what is happening. It's like because many people could ask, like, how do you possibly know, right? And if, according to what you are saying you're doing in the Embassy of the Future, could you give a couple then advices when you are already like traveling back, and now okay, if we could please help somehow, or make some arrangements nowadays to build more creative society and communities, particularly towards the neurodivergent people, what would be your advice? How can we protect ourselves who are neurodivergent, and how we can already now start caring more and more to thrive in the future as a holistic community, as more inclusive towards people with cognitive divergence?
Well, what was that movie, The Hunger Games? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Hunger Games, yeah. And wasn't there, like, was it in the Hunger Games where there was a group called Divergence? I can't remember. I might be mixing movies. I see Divergence as a strength. I not for a moment do I see it as a weakness, and talking about inclusivity. No, that's completely the wrong way of looking at it. That the old world is breaking down. It's inevitable. It's like a tectonic force. That the people with the answers are not going to be the people that conform to old paradigms. It's going to be those that have as you would say, neurodivergent thinking. They're the geniuses. Everyone else needs to let go of their conformity. When I came out into early in school, I thought it was a weakness. When I started to when I had to compete with the best investors on the planet, I suddenly realized, wow, it's a strength. I look at the world differently. And I don't have advice for the neurodivergent thinkers, because they're okay, that we need them. It's everyone else that needs therapy.
Neurotypical, yes.
Like that, really. I
We
mean,
all at some point neurodivergent, right? It's spectrum. We also.
Well, yeah. Of course, it's a spectrum, but what the world needs is, at the moment, more imagination, more neurodivergence. But it's and you're right. We shouldn't really kind of put people in different blocks. Everything's on a spectrum, really. But I when it comes to advice, really, I think if you switch on the news and you read the mainstream media, it's so fear-based. And I, as a trader and investor, I used to read like everything. I'd have a stack of newspapers on my desk every day and research reports. But now I've probably cut my consumption of mainstream media by 80% compared to the peak. And it's not useful. A lot of it is wrong and propaganda. Some of it's planting seeds of negativity. So I really encourage people to focus on themselves, personal development, meditation, all these good things that have become a real trend in society now. And spend time consuming information that's uplifting about what is possible to create, a better civilization. So I spend more time now reading books, or talking to people that are trying to build the future, as opposed to people who are stoking fear about the end of the last civilization. It's a simple anecdote is, I know a lot of people who want to understand international affairs will talk to geopolitical experts, ex-military folk, and etc. But they will always be talking about risk. Oh, China's trying to destroy us. Russia's trying to do this. They're trying. They start from a place of fear. Whereas I'd highly encourage your listeners to go and listen to Jeffrey Sachs, the economist, when he talks about JFK, who was assassinated, and he gave a foreign policy speech about.
I need to make a note. Jeffrey Sachs, and raise the EI, right? So I need to take this.
Jeffrey Sachs. He summarizes a foreign policy speech by JFK, and you listen to that and you want to cry, because it just. I've traveled the world to many continents. I have friends of all sorts of ethnicities, races. I have a daughter who's got a different skin color from me. She's half Korean. And I find that people get on with each other. People love meeting people from different countries, and we don't want war with each other. It's normally the elite classes and certain vested interests that start pretty much every war I've studied. And with that knowledge, JFK, who the CIA lied to him on a few occasions to try and spark off conflict, and he gave a towards the end of his life, he gave a foreign policy talk, and I truly believe that that if you when you look at international affairs, you have to look through the prism of peace. If you talk to the ex-generals in many cases, and the geopolitical experts, they will talk about risk and what could go wrong. Just like if you're building a business and you speak to a lawyer in California, they will tell you everything that can go wrong. And then I've had it myself. I've been on a board of a startup. I listen to a lawyer for an hour, and I lose the will to live. I like literally. I don't want to build the company any longer because he's told me all the negativity. This could go wrong. That could go wrong. Just like the geopolitical expert. But and we need to focus on what could go right. That's how we create. From a conscious perspective, that's how we create a more evolved, conscious civilization. So you're in Norway. I presume you ski, yeah?
I'm Ukrainian. I'm not that. I tried, but it's not part of my DNA. And my kids, they've been raised here. Those they're from Ukraine. They're skiers, passionate skiers. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so here's the metaphor. If I was quite a passionate skier when I lived in Japan, as some of the best snow on the planet, and my French friends always hate hearing that, but it is true. The Alps are great, but the snow quality in Japan's phenomenal, even if the mountains aren't as big. And if you go skiing off-piste in the forest,
Mm-hmm.
there's one really important rule, and it's do not look at the trees.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the tree, you'll hit the tree. Like your body aligns in the direction of the tree,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like looking at the tree thinking, oh, no, I can't hit the tree. Bang, you hit the tree. You have to look at the space in between the trees.
Okay.
And so many people align themselves with what could go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what could go right. And so I'm very positive about the future. I'm not naive to realize that short term it's going to be a lot more turbulence, but despite all of that, you can be building the future day in, day out.
Amazing. And before we're wrapping up, actually, it's the last time. So you remember I've already presented you to my vice president and my big futurist and helper as well, because she believes as well in the future, and that's why she would like to help with so many dreams come true and wishes come true. So today, my vice president, she is a genie lamp, and again, she can grant one wish. So if today you could make a special wish, it can be whatever you want, whatever you wish for yourself or for our planet. So what kind of wish would that be?
I think my wish would be that more and more of humanity would connect to their heart, and that we stop worshipping the mind, the brain, the intellect. Let's call it the intellect.
Mm-hmm.
The tyranny of the intellect. I think we need to reawaken to our hearts. And I guess as a Zen practitioner, we look at three essential centers of intelligence. You could call it three brains, the head, the heart, and the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And our modern civilization's completely based on the intellect, the head. And I think humanity will do very well when we start to enter our hearts again and use our gut, which is the epicenter of intuition. Maybe that's why I enjoyed going to Latin America in recent years, because there's a lot of heart there.
Oh yeah.
So that's
Beautiful.
my wish.
Yes, let's wish, and I'm joining the gut and heart. And Benjamin, thank you so much again for this expansive soul steering journey from the roots of your childhood to the visionary halls of Wall Street and now Embassy of the Future. So I think your message is very clear, and inclusion, diversity of thoughts, and deep presence of ourself, our soul, and our hearts, they're essential in building the future we need. So, to our listeners, may this conversation open new doors in your mind, your mission, and in your heart and in your gut. And until next time, stay bold, open, remember diversity is the game changer. Thank you so much. I wish you much luck with your retreat. And I hope one day actually I can other experience, or maybe even can be helpful as well to participate in making the future together with you will be a great honor and privilege for me.
Beautiful. Would love to have you at Embassy of the Future. Yeah, stay on the line. I'd love to make an invitation to you. But the real pleasure
Okay, I
to.
just can press the button and we can talk a little bit. And thank you to my audience this beautiful sunny Saturday. I hope we give you much radiant energy to believe in future, never give up. Resilience, heart to the heart and gut. Thank you. Bye bye, audience. Bye bye. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I just start again on that?
Yes, we're still recording. So you've been talking about one of your friends, and